There is a particular kind of silence that enters a man's life when he realizes that the woman he has been pursuing no longer looks at him the way she did in the beginning. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It moves through his chest like cold water, and for a while, he does not even have a name for it. He simply notices that her replies take longer, that her laughter sounds different. That is when he speaks, she is already halfway out of the room, even when her body remains still. Most men, when they arrive at this threshold, make the same mistake. They do more, they text more, explain more, apologize more, offer more attention, more time, more of themselves. They believe, quietly and without admitting it, that if they just demonstrate enough care, enough commitment, enough emotion, the woman will return to them. What they do not understand, what no one has taught them, is that this instinct, this reflexive doubling down, is the exact mechanism that seals their relevance. I have worked with men who have gutted their entire lives trying to prove their worth to a woman who stopped seeing them months before they noticed. These are not weak men. They are engineers, business owners, men who run teams, solve problems, and build things. But in this one domain, they operate from a script written in childhood, one that promised them that goodness and effort would be rewarded with love. The world does not work that way. Women do not work that way, and the longer a man clings to that illusion, the faster he disappears in her eyes. Arthur Schopenhauer spent much of his life studying the mechanics of human desire, and what he discovered was not flattering. He argued that romantic love is not some transcendent force, but a biological trapped nature's way of ensuring reproduction by clouding human judgment with illusion. The man believes he is choosing, the woman believes she is choosing. In reality, both are being chosen by something older and far more indifferent than either of them. Schopenhauer called this force the will, a blind, insatiable drive that uses human beings as instruments and discards them the moment they cease to serve its purposes. He saw romantic attachment not as a partnership of souls, but as a temporary alignment of genetic interest, dressed up in poetry so that people would endure the suffering required to reproduce. And within that framework, one thing becomes devastatingly clear. The moment a man begins to orient his life around a woman's approval, he stops being the kind of man whose approval she needs. This is the core thesis, and everything else that follows is simply an examination of how it plays out, over and over, in the lives of modern men. A man who centers his existence around a woman's emotional weather slowly becomes the kind of man she cannot respect. Not because she is cruel, not because women are incapable of loyalty or depth, but because the thing that made him attractive in the first place, the sense that his life had direction, that he was moving towards something larger than her, has been abandoned. And once that is gone, no amount of kindness, no amount of emotional labor, no amount of sacrifice will bring it back. Schopenhauer understood that desire is rooted in lack. A woman does not desire what is always available. She desires what feels difficult to hold, what exists independently of her, what would continue even if she disappeared. The man who makes himself endlessly available, who rearranges his schedule, who drops his hobbies, who texts her first thing in the morning and last thing at night, who explains himself when she goes cold, who sacrifices his mission to tend to her moods. This man has removed the very thing that made him desirable. He has made himself a servant to her emotional state, and in doing so, he has become invisible. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. A man meets a woman. At first, he has his own life. He is training for something, building something, reading something, working on something that existed before she arrived. When she texts, he replies, but not immediately. When she suggests plans, he fits them into his schedule, but he does not rearrange everything. When she tests him, because she will test him, not out of malice but out of instinct, he does not collapse. He does not over-explain. He does not chase. He simply continues. And in that continuation, in that refusal to orbit her emotions, she feels something she rarely feels, the presence of a man who is not trying to extract validation from her, a man who does not need her to complete him. A man whose life would go on, perhaps even unchanged if she left tomorrow. This is not cruelty. This is presence. This is the gravitational pull that Schopenhauer said was misunderstood as love. She moves toward him not because he is chasing her, but because he is not. But then something shifts. It may happen slowly. It could happen all at once. The man begins to feel something he mistakes for love, but which Schopenhauer would call the will asserting itself, biology disguised as emotion. He starts thinking about her constantly. He starts checking his phone. He starts planning his week around her availability. He starts to feel anxious when she does not reply. He's relief, almost euphoria when she does. And in those moments of relief, he gives a little more. He texts a little faster. He explains a little more. He sacrifices a little more of his time, his focus, his mission. He tells himself this is what commitment looks like. He tells himself this is what a good man does. He tells himself that if he just shows her how much he cares, she will see his value. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more he gives, the less she feels. The more he explains, the less she listens. The more he prioritizes her, the less she prioritizes him. And the confusion this creates in him is profound, because he is doing everything he was told would work, and it is destroying the one thing he wanted to protect. I once spoke to a man who had been with a woman for 2 years. He was successful, disciplined, and respected in his field. But every time she pulled away emotionally, he would panic. He would send long messages. He would ask what he did wrong. He would offer to change, to do better, to be more present. And every time he did this, she grew colder. He could not understand it. He was being vulnerable. He was being emotionally available. He was doing what every modern relationship expert told him to do. But what he did not realize was that vulnerability without boundaries is not intimacy. It is surrender. And surrender, in the context of attraction, is death. Schopenhauer would say that the man had allowed the will to colonize his identity. He was no longer a man with a life that included her. He had become a man whose life depended on her, and the moment that dependency became visible, the attraction dissolved, not because she wanted it to, but because attraction is not a choice. It is a response to presence, to autonomy, to the feeling that the other person exists independently and fully, whether you are there or not. Now, let us go deeper into the mechanism. What actually happens inside a man when he begins to lose himself? It starts with a thought that feels reasonable. I should make her feel valued. He begins to text her more often. He begins to check in, ask how her day was, offer support, and show that he is thinking of her. At first, this feels good to both of them. She feels seen. He feels useful. But then the frequency increases. The texts come faster. The check-ins become expectations. And slowly, without either of them naming it, a new dynamic forms. He becomes the giver, and she becomes the one who decides whether the gift is enough. This is where the collapse begins. Because the moment a man begins to perform for a woman's approval, he has entered her frame. He is no longer operating from his own center. He is reacting to her signals, adjusting his behavior based on her feedback, trying to solve the puzzle of her mood. And the more he does this, the more exhausting he becomes to her, not because she is heartless, but because she can feel, on an instinctive level, that he has abandoned his own direction. He is no longer a man with a mission who happens to include her. He is a man whose mission has become hers. Schopenhauer argued that the will, the blind force driving all life, operates through desire, and that desire is always rooted in illusion. The man believes that if he can just make her happy, she will love him. But happiness is not a fixed state. It is a moving target, and the more he chases it, the further it recedes. The woman, meanwhile, begins to feel something she cannot articulate, a quiet resentment. Not because he is doing anything wrong, but because his constant attention, his constant need for reassurance, his constant presence has turned him into a burden. She does not want to manage his emotions. She does not want to be the center of his world. She wants to be desired by a man who has a world, not by a man who has made her his entire world. And this distinction is everything. A man who has a mission, who has boundaries, who can disappoint her without collapsing, who can let her be upset without rushing to fix it. This man remains attractive because he remains separate. He does not need her validation to know who he is. He does not need her mood to dictate his day. He can love her without losing himself. And that is the only kind of love that sustains attraction. But most men do not operate this way. Most men, when they feel a woman pulling away, do not sit with the discomfort. They do not allow the silence. They do not trust that their value exists independently of her response. Instead, they panic. They double down. They explain. They apologize. They offer more. And every time they do this, they confirm her unconscious suspicion that he is not the man she thought he was, that he is not solid, that he is not sidded, that he is in fact dependent on her, and therefore no longer desirable. I have seen this pattern destroy relationships that had real potential. I have watched men who were loved, respected, desired, turn themselves into emotional servants because they could not tolerate the tension of a woman's withdrawal. They could not let her have her own experience without trying to manage it. And in trying to manage it, they killed the very thing they were trying to preserve. Schopenhauer would say this is the tragedy of desire, that the thing you want most is the thing your wanting destroys. The man wants the woman to love him, but his need for her love makes him unattractive. The woman wants a man who is sovereign, who is complete without her, but the moment she gets close to him, his sovereignty dissolves. This is not a flaw in the individuals. This is the structure of the game, and the only way to win is to stop playing by the rules of need, to stop making your peace dependent on her response, to stop orienting your life around her emotional weather, to stop sacrificing your mission, your time, your respect, your clarity for the temporary relief of her approval, because that relief is a trap. It is the will using pleasure to keep you enslaved, and the longer you remain enslaved, the less of yourself remains. Let us now zoom out and examine the wider system in which this dynamic unfolds. Modern men are not just navigating individual relationships, they are navigating a cultural environment that has made masculine initiative increasingly dangerous and increasingly invisible. Every approach is a risk, every expression of desire can be reframed as aggression, every boundary a man sets can be called controlling, every standard he holds can be called toxic. The platforms men use to meet women are designed to maximize female choice and minimize male leverage. Dating apps give women access to hundreds of men simultaneously, which means the average man is competing not with the men in his city, but with the top men in his region. The result is a market in which most men are functionally invisible, and the few men who are visible are overwhelmed with options. In this environment, the man who invests emotionally, who pursues seriously, who treats dating as a path toward partnership, is at a structural disadvantage, because the woman he is pursuing has no incentive to commit. She has endless options, she has social validation, she has economic independence, and she's been told by every cultural message available that she should never settle, that she deserves the best, that any hesitation she feels is a sign that he is not good enough. Schopenhauer would see this as the will expressing itself through culture. The biological imperative has not changed. Women still seek strength, status, genetic fitness, security, but the environment in which they seek it has been distorted. The signals are scrambled, the feedback loops are broken. A man can do everything right to be kind, be honest, be consistent, be vulnerable, and still be discarded. Not because he failed, but because the system itself rewards push-outs for maximizing optionality and punishes men for demonstrating need. And so many men, after years of rejection, after years of being told they are not enough, simply stop trying. They stop approaching. They stop investing. They stop believing that effort will be rewarded. And the culture calls this failure. It calls it fragility. It calls it male toxicity. But Schopenhauer would call it clarity. He would say these men have seen through the illusion. They have recognized that the cost of playing the game is higher than the reward, and they have chosen, quietly and without drama, to walk away. This is not bitterness. This is not hatred of women. This is men making a rational calculation that their time, their energy, their attention, their emotional labor are worth more than what the current environment offers in return. And the moment a man makes this calculation and acts on it, the moment he stops chasing, stops explaining, stops performing, stops sacrificing his mission for a woman's approval, something shifts, not immediately, not dramatically, but unmistakably. The women who ignored him start noticing his absence. The woman who took him for granted starts reaching out. The dynamic that felt fixed suddenly feels negotiable. And the man, if he is wise, does not take this as a victory. He takes it as data. He learns that his value was always there. It was simply obscured by his need for validation. The moment he stopped needing it, the moment he reclaimed his attention and his time and his mission, his value became visible again. Not because he changed, but because he stopped diminishing himself. Now let us translate this into behavior. If you recognize yourself in any of this, if you have been the man who texts too much, who explains too much, who sacrifices too much, here is what sovereignty looks like in practice. First, notice when you are performing for approval. Notice when you send a message not because you have something to say, but because you need a response. Notice when you rearrange your schedule not because you want to, but because you fear what will happen if you do not. Notice when you apologize not because you did something wrong, but because you are trying to manage her mood. These moments are not love. They are fear, and fear, dressed up as care, is the slowest way to destroy attraction. Stop pretending that your availability is generosity. It is not. It is a bid for control. You are trying to stay close so that you can monitor her feelings, so that you can prevent her from leaving, so that you can avoid the discomfort of uncertainty. But this strategy does not work. It never works. The tighter you hold, the faster she slips away. Second, return your attention to your mission, not as a strategy to get her back, but because your mission is the only thing that makes you whole. Schopenhauer would say that the only escape from the suffering of desire is to redirect the will towards something beyond survival and reproduction. For a man, that means work. It means discipline. It means building something that exists independently of any woman's approval. When you are training, when you are creating, when you are solving problems, when you are moving toward a goal that matters to you, you are not thinking about her. You are not checking your phone. You are not wondering why she has not replied. You are present. And that presence is what makes you attractive, not because it is a tactic, but because it is real. A woman can feel when a man has a life. She can feel when he is centered, and she can feel just as clearly when he has made her the center. The first is magnetic, the second is suffocating. Third, allow her to have her reactions without trying to fix them. When she's upset, let her be upset. When she withdraws, let her withdraw. Do not chase, do not explain, do not try to make it better. Your job is not to manage her emotions. Your job is to remain solid while she moves through them. This is not coldness. This is respect. You are treating her like an adult who can handle her own feelings, rather than a child who needs to be soothed. And in doing so, you are also protecting yourself, because every time you rush in to fix her mood, you are training her to use her mood as leverage. You are teaching her that if she withdraws, you will come running. And once that pattern is set, it becomes the foundation of the relationship. She learns that her feelings control your behavior, and you learn that your peace depends on her approval. This is not partnership. This is emotional servitude, and it will destroy you both. Fourth, be willing to lose her. This is the hardest part and the most important. You must be willing to walk away, not as a bluff, not as a manipulation, but as a genuine boundary. If the cost of keeping her is the loss of yourself, the answer is simple: let her go. Schopenhauer would say that all suffering comes from attachment, and that the only way to end suffering is to release the attachment. You cannot force someone to choose you. You cannot negotiate desire. You cannot earn attraction through sacrifice. Either she sees your value or she does not. Either she respects your boundaries or she does not. Either the relationship enhances your life or it drains it. And if it drains it, if you are smaller and quieter and more confused than you were before you met her, then the relationship is not love. It is a slow erosion of self. And the kindest thing you can do for both of you is to walk away. Now, let me show you two futures. In the first, you ignore all of this. You continue to text first. You continue to over-explain. You continue to sacrifice your time, your focus, your mission for the hope that she will see your effort and reward it with love. And for a while, it may even seem to work. She may stay. She may even say she loves you. But underneath, something is dying. Your self-respect is dying. Your self-respect is dying. Your sense of agency is dying. Your belief that you are enough, independent of her approval, is dying. And 5 years from now, you will be a stranger in your own life. You will look in the mirror and not recognize the man staring back. You will have everything you thought you wanted: her presence, her commitment, maybe even her ring, but you will feel hollow because you traded your sovereignty for her approval. And once that trade is made, there is no getting it back. In the second future, you treat this moment as initiation. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You reclaim your attention, your time, your mission. You build your life around principles that existed before she arrived and will exist after she leaves. You train, you work, you create. You set boundaries and you enforce them, even when it costs you. You allow her to be upset without collapsing. You allow her to leave without begging. And yes, it is harder. Yes, it is lonelier at first. Yes, there will be nights when you question whether you made the right choice. But 5 years from now, you will be unrecognizable in the best possible way. You will be stronger. You will be clearer. You will be respected, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. And the people in your life, including the women, will treat you differently, not because you manipulated them, but because you stopped abandoning yourself for their approval. Schopenhauer believed that life is suffering, that desire is the engine of that suffering, and that the only escape is to see through the illusion and stop letting the will dictate your choices. He was not optimistic. He did not promise happiness, but he did promise clarity. And clarity, in the end, is more valuable than comfort, because comfort without sovereignty is just slow death. A man who sacrifices his mission for a woman's approval may feel safe in the short term, but he has traded his future for a temporary peace, and when that peace inevitably shatters, when she loses respect for him, when she leaves, when he wakes up one day and realizes he has become the kind of man he used to pity, the cost will be unbearable. But the man who walks away, who refuses to participate in his own diminishment, who chooses clarity over comfort, sovereignty over approval, presence over performance, that man may lose her, but he will not lose himself, and in the end, that is the only thing that matters. If this struck something in you, if you felt the weight of recognition as you read it, then share it, subscribe, keep this work alive for the men who need it. Because the world will not teach you this. The culture will not teach you this. The women in your life cannot teach you this. Because it is not their job, it is yours. And the longer you wait, the more of yourself you will lose. A man who centers his life around a woman's approval becomes the kind of man she cannot respect. Not because she wants to lose him, but because nature does not reward surrender.